Hi, and welcome to this episode of Stimming and Stilettos with Dr. Tasha. And I am excited. I'm always excited. You guys know this by now. Like I get excited by every guest. I always tell people that when I ask someone to be on the show or someone, says, hey, I think I'd be a great guest, or I know of someone who would be a great guest, I just get really excited because one, this is a labor of love for me because I just think this is something we should be doing. As women, we should be telling our stories, getting it out into the universe, and making sure that other people know and can grow and learn from our experiences. So today we have Meredith Broussard, and I can't even wait to hear your story and get to know you just a little bit better and just to converse with you. So welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. It's really great to be here.
Awesome. So as we do with every show, Meredith, please tell us your STEM story.
Well, my STEM story starts back in the day. So I am Generation X, and I started college at exactly the same time that the web was born. So I'm on the bleeding edge of people who have had the web for their entire adult life. I started out majoring in computer science. After college, I went into computer science as a career, and then I quit to become a journalist. What happened was I was pushed out because of all of the kind of textbook forces that edge women out of STEM careers. I was the only one who looked like me. There was nobody ahead of me who looked like me, who I could model my career on. And then there was the routine sexual harassment, and then there was uh, the kind of posturing of, you must be less because you don't understand this, right?
Yeah.
There was just a lot of that. I couldn't take it. I quit to become a journalist, and then I came back to computer science as a data journalist. Data journalism is the practice of finding stories in numbers and using numbers to tell stories. I am a data journalism professor at NYU. So I teach data journalism. My work is about building artificial intelligence for investigative reporting. And I also work in data science and AI ethics. And all of that comes together in a new book that I have out called More Than a Glitch: Confronting Race, Gender, and Ability Bias in Tech.
Oof. I can't even wait. I just can't even wait. Okay, so I guess easy kind of softball question to start with. Do I want to go there?
Anyway, ask me anything.
I want to know your thoughts on Chat GPT.
Well, have you played with Chat GPT?
I have.
It's fun, isn't it?
It is. It's totally fun, and it's so easy that it's almost like whoa, like what So I started thinking like, okay, what is this, right? And is it? And so then you hear the stories about how it's being used in education, has been using, like there's all the things, and it's like, well, also when you're talking about ethical issues or being in data ethics, I'm like, okay, so that's now the conversation. Like, how is this? Like, are we blurring lines and those kinds of things?
Well, so let me ask, what have you used it for that has been really fun or really useful?
I think I was using it to help me curate some social media content. So I put in my topic and the group and the topic I wanted to talk about or address, and put those two together, and it gave me all of these interesting article pieces or social media paragraphs or little sentences that I could sprinkle into some of my social media posts. It was great.
Yeah, that sounds really helpful.
It was great. I was like, yes.
Yeah. Well, I've really been enjoying hearing how people are using it and just the creative things that people are doing with it. I know some kids who use it to create characters, and then they have ChatGPT write a battle to the death between the characters, which sounds really fun. I know another kid who uses it to summarize passages in the Bible so that he can do his religion homework. I mean, people are doing all kinds of interesting things with. Oh, the other thing I really like is the crochet patterns. So somebody got ChatGPT to write patterns for little crochet animals. And then they crocheted them, and the animals look absolutely crazy. They've got, 3 eyes and, 12 wings and just, madness.
Oh.
It's very amusing. So the human creativity has been the best part of it. I definitely fall into the skeptics category. Uh, when people start talking about, oh, ChatGPT is like ushering in a new era, and oh, we have GPT-4 now, it's so much better, and it's going to be really different. Like, it's not going to be that different. Uh, it's fun, it's a tool, but it's not the invention of fire. It's very sophisticated autocomplete, it's fantastic, but it's just a tool, right? So a lot of my work is about demystifying technology and helping people understand that AI is not magic, that the people who make AI are not wizards. Like, we're all just people, and we're all just doing the best and doing our best. And also, human frailty is a factor, right? So very human biases creep into the technology that we create.
Yeah, I agree. I remember I've had a couple of conversations with a couple of really people who are like hardcore data scientists folks. Dr. Brandeis Marshall is she's been on here she's done an episode
Terrific.
too. I love her,
Yeah,
right?
so smart.
And so yes, and so I think that's so her focus, or some of her focus, has been that there is an inherent bias and some unconscious bias in data and data analysis and data research and data science, and that we really have to be careful when we are doing data, when we're mining for data, we're pulling this data, we're using this data, that there is bias in it. I don't know where, it's like, I guess that's the question though. So like, how are we addressing that? I guess that's a question for me, because we talked about it, and she gave me her take on it, but I'd like to get yours.
Well, one really useful example I like to use is the example covered by a journalism organization called The Markup a few years ago. And The Markup did an investigation into mortgage approval algorithms.
Yeah.
And they looked at automated mortgage approval algorithms and found that across the country, borrowers of color were 40 to 80% more likely to be turned down for a mortgage than their white counterparts. And in some metro areas, the disparity was more than 250%.
Yeah.
Right. So the mortgage approval algorithms are clearly biased. Now, sometimes you need to sit with that for a second and say, all right, well, I was told that technology is objective, is unbiased, is neutral. That is unfortunately not true.
Right.
But why did this happen? Well, we can look at what we know from sociology. And sociologists have told us for years that there is a history of financial discrimination in the United States. There's a history of redlining. And so these mortgage approval algorithms are machine learning systems, and they work the same way as every machine learning system. You take a whole bunch of data, you feed it into the computer, you have the computer make a model that articulates the mathematical patterns in data, and then the computer makes decisions similar to the ones that have been made in the past.
Yeah.
Well, if you feed in data about who's gotten mortgages in the past, you'll see racial disparity. So when you feed that into the computer, that's what goes into the model. And that's why the model makes those decisions. Like, it doesn't actually require sophisticated mathematical reasoning. It just requires common sense and historical knowledge, right? So we
So
can't assume that computers are going to do things better than humans.
yes, but a computer's machine learning is directly affected by humans.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So a machine learning system will have all of the biases that are in the data that we're using to train the system. And people will often say, "Oh, well, why don't we just fix the mortgage approval algorithm by putting in better data that's more unbiased, that's more inclusive,"
Right.
which absolutely would be a fix, but there is no such data.
Right, right. Because the data is the data, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Like, we can't escape history. We do not yet live in a perfect world.
said so perfectly. And I think that's the sort of the beauty of it though. It's just like, I think one of the things that has been coming out is that there's this bias that's in the data, right? So I feel like these conversations, we need to have more of these conversations, but we
Mhm.
also need to take steps towards addressing the whys behind the bias, and then making really concrete steps to prevent, solve, resolve that said bias. I know that's really easy for me to sit here and say that. I don't know if, can you talk about what's happening within the industry to sort of address those things?
Well, I can talk about a success story of getting rid of algorithmic bias. And it has to do with the intersection of technology and medical racism. So until a couple of years ago, there was a formula used to calculate when someone was eligible for the kidney transplant list, and this formula was biased against Black people. So your kidney function is measured with a calculation called eGFR, estimated glomerular filtration rate. And when your eGFR dips to 20% function, you are eligible for the kidney transplant list, and you wait for a donor match to turn up. Well, there was one calculation for everybody, and then for Black people, there was a different calculation. And
Oh,
Black
wow.
people got an additional multiplier so that the EGFR score, if you were uh, if you were calculating for a Black person, would be higher. And so Black patients got onto the donor list later because they had to be sicker than everybody else.
Whoa.
Obviously a problem. There was actually even a Grey's Anatomy episode about this.
I think
Uh,
I remember it. Yeah.
mhm, mhm. It's a really big problem. It's been a big problem for a long time. And advocates got this changed. Patients and doctors spoke up and said, this is unfair. There is no medical reason for this score to be calculated differently because race is not biological, right? And in
Right.
fact, this notion that uh, that the kidney numbers needed to be calculated differently was based on an antiquated notion that Black people have greater muscle mass than other
Mhm.
people, which is a notion that dates back to fetishization of Black male strength in the slavery era.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it's simply not true. So what has happened is the American Kidney Foundation changed the calculation. They
Good.
said, hey, we recognize that this is not good. We recognize that this is an example of a racist belief. We are changing it. And, they did it.
I love that.
Yeah,
Love
really
the
great.
story.
But uh, the implementation uh, is rolling out slowly, right? So every lab in the entire world has to update their systems
Um,
to not, to calculate the eGFR score differently.
yeah.
And you just don't know how quickly that happens. Um, UNOS, the donor organ organization, has to rearrange the list, like based on these new calculations, because some people are get eligible now, but they're not weren't eligible before and did the other calculations. So
Mm,
it's a really good example of how a very human bias uh, can get embedded in an algorithmic system. Because if you're using an algorithmic system to, say, predict who's going to, uh, you know, whose kidney function is going to decline at what rate, like if you're using this racist calculation, then you're going to insert bias into the system. When we're doing any kind of medical diagnostics, we really need to look back at the history of the diagnostic criteria
yeah,
and examine it for social problems.
agreed. So I guess the question though is if how long, well, I guess how long did it take them to actually do this work, to actually get them to sort of to acknowledge that yes, this is indeed a problem, and then how long did it take for them to change? Do you know?
A really, really long time.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Yeah. It was definitely not an overnight fix.
Mm,
And one of the things that's kind of interesting to do is to look in the medical literature and to note when the change happened, and when we started seeing advocacy for changing the kidney
nice.
formula. And so in the book, I look at some of the scholarly literature. I look at uh, how did advocates get this changed, and what are the implications, not only for algorithmic systems that that involve kidney donations, but also for other algorithmic systems,
Yeah,
because there's a lot of desire to use more computation in medicine, which is sometimes fantastic and sometimes not so
not
great.
right. Well, okay, so let's talk about the book. Like, how did this come about? Like, where what it was the idea, and I guess some of the things that you learned, as you were writing it or as you finished writing it and are now, talking about it places.
Sure. So the book is a continuation of what I started thinking about with my last book, Artificial Unintelligence.
Mm,
The subtitle is "How Computers Misunderstand the World,"
mm,
and the so that book really focuses on AI, on demystifying AI. I care a lot about empowering people around computational topics. We tend to talk about AI or machine learning or technology in general as being elevated, as being something that normal people can't understand, and I
true.
totally reject that.
Yeah.
It's far more inclusive to bring people in to say, all right, algorithms are increasingly being used to make decisions on our behalf, but in the democracy, you need to be able to push back against unfair decisions.
Mm,
Right. So that starts by building computational literacy. And one of the conversations that I found myself having over and over again after artificial unintelligence came out is I started having lots of conversations about the intersection of technology and race, technology and gender, technology and disability. And so I decided to explore all of these ideas in a new book.
mm, love this. So, okay, so how would you define um well, I guess let's take it back. So AI, of course, is a huge topic. How would you define it? And then what are some of the ways in which you have gone about demystifying it?
Well, AI is just math,
Mhm.
period, full stop.
I love, oh my God, I love this answer so much.
Yeah. I mean,
I
we tend to
just,
talk about it like, oh, it's this Hollywood blah, blah, blah. It's
yeah.
going to like bring about a new era.
Mhm.
It is not. It's just math. It's really complicated, beautiful math, but it's just math. And when we do machine learning, so, all right, let me back up.
Mhm.
Artificial intelligence is a subfield of computer science, the same way that algebra is a subfield of mathematics. And then inside the field of artificial intelligence, we have other subfields. We've got deep learning, we've got neural nets, we've got expert systems, we've got natural language processing. Uh, we have all these other subfields, right? But one of the things that happens is people tend to say artificial intelligence when they mean machine learning. Right?
Mm,
Machine learning, it's a subfield. And then it gets even more confusing because it sounds like there's a little brain in the computer, right? Artificial intelligence sounds like, oh, it's about like the box becoming sentient.
yes,
Machine learning implies the computer is learning like a
yes,
child might.
yes,
And lots of people are invested in this metaphor, right?
yep.
Because they want the kind of Hollywood sci-fi kind of artificial intelligence to be real, but it is simply not. It's just imaginary. It's really fun. And I absolutely embrace all of the incredible imaginative stuff that comes out of science fiction worlds. Um, I just read today in a little bio of Nichelle Nichols on the, well, I read that MLK was a fan of Star Trek,
Yeah.
and he actually convinced her to stay on the
Hey,
show. She was going to,
yes,
I love
yes.
I absolutely love that, and I love imagining that conversation too.
I guess, right? Can you, I mean, yes, that's a fabulous conversation to me. Have been like a little fly on the
Oh my
wall.
gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Just it,
Mhm.
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so where were we?
So I just and I'm glad that you broke that down because I think people are thinking, well, people have really broad kind of science fiction ideas about what AI, machine learning, all of those deeper learning are, and have no real clue what happens, like what is actually happening, what is occurring when we are talking about an AI algorithm, when we talk about machine learning, what's happening. So they assume that something magical, like we sprinkle some fairy dust and then things happen, and then we have a computer or a person who is a computer who can actually think like us and then do things, and they're able to do it without us having to have any input at all.
Right. Right. And that is it's fun to imagine again, but it's not real.
Mm,
Like what's actually happening in AI systems, in machine learning systems, is you take a bunch of data, you feed it into the computer makes a model, and then it makes other decisions based on that model. Like that's it. And we also have this perception that AI is something special, that it's going to feel really different to be using AI. But actually, we're using AI all the time, and you just don't realize it. Like there is AI in the background every time you do a Google search. There's something like 250 different machine learning models that get activated.
oh,
You know,
wow. I don't think I thought about it, but now that we're talking about it, I can see that. I can see that.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're talking over Zoom. If you use the feature of Zoom that automatically generates a transcript of our
Yeah.
conversation, that will be generated using AI.
Yeah, that's
And
that's
it and it doesn't feel special. It feels like, oh, I'm just pushing a button on
right.
technology.
Right. Right. So I love the idea that AI is kind of ordinary, you know.
Mhm.
I love that. I think that that will actually really help. That message needs to get pushed out more. Is that it's ordinary. Like
Yeah.
we're already doing it. It has blown up. Why do you think it has? Like why now is it seems like it's everywhere? Like where if there's an article, there's several 10, 20, 100 articles a day about something AI related.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's the new hotness right now. Like
That's
it is where all the action is. And people want to get in on the trend. And it's also really interesting. Like it is extremely fun to build AI systems. And the fact that you can feed in all of this data and get reasonable predictions or decisions out is fantastic. Like it's really great. And there are lots of useful applications of the technology. So I start the book with an exploration of what is AI, what it is and isn't, and then I take readers a little bit further and say, okay, these are some of the misuse of AI or automated systems, and here are some of the places where people have really suffered harms at the hands of these systems. So for example, I have a chapter about policing, and I tell the story that was reported in The Verge originally, about a man in Chicago who was identified by a predictive policing system as at being at risk of being involved in a crime.
Mm.
They didn't know. So the police knocked on his door and they said, well, the computer identified you. And we don't know if that means that you're going to be committing a crime or you're going to be the victim of a crime. But our computer says you're going to be involved. And the man said, go away. Like, I do
Right.
not have any time for this. Like,
Mhm.
you know, but they kept coming back. And they came with social workers, like offering, oh yeah, let's get you into like some kind of, crime prevention program. And he was like, no, thank you, please go away. And they kept coming back. And so people in the neighborhood saw the police cars outside his apartment all the time. And he got a reputation for being a snitch.
Oh,
And somebody shot him
oh,
for being a snitch.
oh no.
He was not. It was just that the police were using this computer program and they just kept visiting him, and that was the cause.
That's what I say. So the very thing that they were hoping to prevent, they caused or they helped
Exactly.
to happen.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the history of using computers in policing is full of incidents like this. There is a fantastic documentary by Shalini Kantaya called Coded Bias.
Yes.
That
Seen it, watched it, loved it.
Fabulous,
I
fabulous.
think there should
Okay.
be a part two.
That would be very fun. I had fun doing part one.
Yeah.
And so Coded Bias follows the story of Dr. Joe Golamwini, who does this project called Gender Shades, where Gender Shades looks at facial recognition.
Yeah.
The big finding is that facial recognition is biased. It's better at identifying dark skin than light skin. It's better at identifying men than identifying women. And the film urges us to reflect on how facial recognition is used in policing.
Mm.
And
Yes.
I've been thinking through that very deeply since since being involved in the film. And and it's really shifted my thinking a lot.
Wow. I'm I'm stumped by this. Well, not stumped. I guess there's so many. This is deep. It has far-reaching implications that could change so many things. What the question that I wanted to ask is how do we start to address the bias that we find within um, these, within AI and these things, right? Um, because it's so important. I'll just leave it there. But how do we, even in the facial recognition, like how do we prevent, or I guess prevent is the word I'm going to use, this bias from being a part of it?
Well, I have a really easy answer. Are you ready?
Yeah.
You buy my book.
Yes. I love that so much.
All
I love
right, and
that.
read it. That's the other thing.
Oh,
So there isn't one starting place that's going to fix everything. One of the ways I like to think about it is that it took us several decades to get into the mess we're in the
mhm.
current computational era. So I no longer expect there to be an easy answer. And I also don't expect that we're going to be able to just write a computer program to code our way out of it.
Yeah.
So I think that we need to add nuance to the way that we talk about technology. As I said before, the narrative thus far has been, oh, technology is so great. We're just going to use more and more technology, and we're going to end up at this place where AI runs everything and like everything's computers and humans don't do anything.
Right.
Like, that is naive. That is clearly not the case. So we need to back it up. We need to think about, okay, these are socio-technical systems.
Mhm.
It's not just about the technology, it's about society too. And we also need to take an historical perspective. We need to look at what are the problems of the past and how can we build our technology so we're not embedding the problems of the past in the systems that we're building that we're hoping to get us toward the future. right?
Wow.
So complicate the narrative, build technology differently. It's going to take individual effort and it's going to take effort on the policy level. So I'm really pleased that there has been some movement
Mhm.
at the state level, at the federal level, and also internationally on doing better policymaking around AI.
I think we should. I think we're at a point where it's here. I think it's here to stay. I do think I love the what you said about complicating the narrative. We've got to. It's got to be so. It's got to be full and well rounded, and with all of the nuances that go along with it. We got to have a full conversation about it,
Mhm.
and then we have to put parameters and all the things that come along um with it, so like if we want to enact change, if we want to do something different, like what are the historical portions of the programming, but what does it mean, right, for who?
Mhm.
So those conversations really have to happen, and have to happen like at meaningful levels, at all the levels that matter. I've
Absolutely.
never heard, and I just learned a new word today, but socio-technical. I like, what? I've never heard this word before. Love it.
It's a good one.
It is. It is, but it does help to focus the conversation, because I mean, technology, there is a social aspect to technology, and the way in which we are using it is both social and technical, right? So
Mhm.
they go together. And my
Yeah.
kids like to say that. It's like, Mom, you go together with this. And I'm like, I know.
Mm.
So they go together.
That's so neat. That's so neat. But you know what I'm also reminded of is I'm reminded of the fact that we need to broaden the conversations as well. We need to think about who's in the room, and whose voices are we listening to when we're designing technology.
Yeah.
This comes up a lot when people are designing for accessibility. Um, Very often people will design things that they say are, for increasing access, but they won't have people with disabilities in the room
Right.
when the design is happening. So one of the things that uh, was really made crystal clear to me while writing the book, even I mean, what I knew it before, but uh, we need to have multiple voices in the room uh, when new technologies are being conceptualized, rolled out, and we need to listen to those voices. We need to empower people to speak up.
Oof, that's a mic drop moment right there. I mean, I got nothing else. I got nothing else. Okay, so tell people where they can find the book, where they can find you. What's next for you?
Well, what's next is I am hoping to have a lot of conversations about the ideas in the book. So More Than a Glitch, Confronting Race, Gender, and Ability Bias in Tech is available now everywhere books are sold. And you can find me online at meredithbroussard.com.
Awesome. So, audience, as you guys know, this information will be in the show notes. I repeat, it will be in the show notes. So please read the show notes. So we will have her LinkedIn, we will have her website, we will have a link to buy the actual book. So please go and get it. I don't think you'll be disappointed. If you're even remotely curious about what's happening in terms of AI and machine learning and all the things that we talked about here, this is your book. And then you can also pick up her first book, right? And learn and go deeper into it and be able to have an informed conversation about it, especially if, if it's an interest of yours. But if you're dabbling in this area, you have kids, you're in your kid's school, your business and offices maybe trying to invest or in technology or invest. So this book is for everybody. So there's not a place where it doesn't fit. So this book's for you. So I have one last question for you, and it is, if you could travel back through time and talk to your younger self, what advice would you give her and why?
So I would tell my younger self, there's nothing wrong with you.
Mm,
I always, when I was in college and an early career person, I I always felt like there was something wrong with me because I didn't I felt like there were things I didn't understand. And now I realize that, oh, actually, like it was like what you were feeling was, systemic racism, was like gender discrimination, and people were trying to make you feel alienated.
Mhm.
So I would tell younger me, hey, listen, like, no, you don't need to blame yourself. And so I say that a lot when I talk to uh, when I talk to young people. I say, listen, if you are feeling like you're not good enough, like that's about structural discrimination. Like that's people gatekeeping and trying to make you feel like you're not enough, and
Yeah.
you are plenty. You are already enough.
Oh, ah, love. Y'all take that in.
Well, and you are really terrific for having me on. Thank you so
Oh,
much.
you're welcome. I enjoyed this conversation so much. Um, I really want to invite you back on because I feel like there's additional conversations we can have. We just touched the surface. And then, especially after I myself get and read your book, I'm going to be,
Fabulous.
I'm going to email and I'm just,
Excellent.
so that we
Excellent.
can
Well, it is
have.
always fantastic to talk to a dope Black engineer.
Hey, hey. I try. I try. So, all right. Well, thank you again for being a guest on the show. Just enjoyed this so much. And again, go get the book for my audience. And as I end every show, you guys take care of yourselves.